Chosen one, stop everything you are doing right now and give this your full presence, not half of your attention, not a distracted mind, not a divided spirit. This is not something to scroll past, not something to hear in the background while you do something else. There are moments in life that don't come as noise, they come as a shift, and if you miss the shift, you repeat the season. So be here, fully, even if just for this moment. You have been feeling it lately, even if you couldn't explain it properly. That quiet pressure in your chest when everything looks normal on the outside but something inside you feels different. That sense that conversations don't land the same way they used to. That people feel slightly distant even when they are close. That your mind is loud even in silence. You thought maybe it was stress, maybe it was overthinking, maybe it was just fatigue. But deep down you already knew it was something more. What you were going through is not confusion, it is transition. And transition always feels like loss before it feels like clarity. It always feels like separation before it feels like direction. It always feels like emptiness before it feels like alignment. You are not falling apart. You are being pulled out of what can no longer hold who you are becoming. That is why certain things don't satisfy you anymore. That is why certain conversations drain you instead of entertain you. That is why certain environments feel heavier than before. It is not because they changed, it is because you changed. And when you change internally, everything that is not aligned with that change begins to feel uncomfortable externally. You are not losing interest in life. You are losing tolerance for what is misaligned with your growth. And yes, that can feel isolating. There are moments where you feel like you are physically present but emotionally distant, like you are in the room but not fully in the room, like you are around people but not fully connected to them, and instead of understanding it, you started questioning yourself. Am I becoming distant? Am I becoming cold? Am I overthinking everything? But what if none of that is true? What if you are simply outgrowing the version of you that used to belong in those spaces? There is a phase in every transformation where you are no longer who you were, but you are not yet fully who you are becoming. That space in between feels unstable because it has no identity to hold on to yet. Old habits don't fit, but new habits are not fully formed. Old environments feel wrong, but new environments haven't arrived yet. And in that gap, silence becomes your teacher whether you asked for it or not. Silence is not punishment, it is recalibration. You were never meant to hear everything, respond to everything, explain everything, defend everything. There are seasons where speaking too much actually scatters your direction instead of clarifying it. There are seasons where reacting too quickly pulls you out of alignment instead of protecting your peace. So life begins to reduce the noise, not to isolate you, but to sharpen your awareness. Because clarity doesn't grow in chaos. It grows in stillness. And stillness often feels like distance before it feels like understanding. You might have noticed that you are more aware of people's intentions now. Things you used to ignore, you can no longer ignore. Things you used to laugh off now feel different. It is not that people suddenly became fake or difficult. It is that your discernment became stronger. And when discernment strengthens, tolerance for confusion weakens. That is not bitterness. That is growth. Growth changes what you can and cannot sit with. There are also moments when you feel tired in a way sleep cannot fix. Not just physically tired, but deeply mentally and emotionally drained. Like your system is processing something invisible. Like something inside you is reorganizing itself. And instead of fighting it, you are being asked to slow down and allow it. Because not every exhaustion is physical. Some exhaustion is transformation in progress. You are shedding versions of yourself that you outgrew silently. And shedding is not comfortable. It removes familiarity. It removes identity. It removes what used to feel like you. And even if what is coming is better, the process of leaving what is known always feels like loss. That is why emotions feel unpredictable lately. One moment you are fine, the next moment something deep rises without warning, not because something is wrong, but because something is moving out of you that no longer belongs in your next stage. Emotional release is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it comes as unexpected sadness, unexpected reflection, unexpected sensitivity. Let it pass through. Do not fight every wave as if it is an enemy. Some waves are just cleansing what the mind could not process while busy surviving. And your mind has been busy for a long time, busy trying to understand people, busy trying to make sense of situations that never fully made sense, busy trying to hold things together that were already falling apart internally. Now something in you is saying enough. Not everything deserves analysis. Not everything deserves explanation. Not everything deserves reaction. Some things are meant to be observed, not absorbed. You are also becoming more protective of your energy, even if you don't call it that yet. You feel less interested in over-explaining yourself, less interested in proving your intentions, less interested in being understood by everyone. And that shift might feel strange at first because you used to believe being understood was necessary for peace. But peace does not require universal understanding. It requires personal alignment. It requires personal alignment. There will always be people who misunderstand you no matter how clearly you speak. There will always be people who interpret your silence incorrectly. There will always be people who project their own experiences onto your growth. If you try to correct every misunderstanding, you will never move forward. So you begin to learn something deeper. You begin to learn restraint. You begin to learn timing. You begin to learn that not every response deserves your energy. This is not detachment from people. It is attachment to purpose, and purpose requires focus. You are in a season where focus is being rebuilt inside you. Slowly, quietly, not through pressure, but through removal. Things are falling away not to harm you, but to clear you. Some connections naturally weaken. Some conversations naturally fade. Some desires naturally lose weight. And what remains starts to become more clear, more aligned, more intentional. That clarity might feel uncomfortable at first because it removes distraction, and distraction is often what kept things emotionally manageable. But clarity removes comfort and replaces it with truth, and truth is not always loud. Sometimes truth is simply what remains when everything unnecessary leaves. You might also find yourself questioning your path more deeply, wondering where things are going, wondering why certain doors have not opened yet, wondering why timing feels slower than expected. But delay is not always denial. Sometimes delay is development you cannot see yet. What is being built inside you cannot always be rushed externally. If you were placed into what you are asking for before you were ready for it, it would not sustain you. So what feels like waiting is often preparation in disguise. You are not behind. You are being built. And what is being built in you is not just success, it is stability. Not just opportunity, but capacity. Not just visibility, but strength to hold what comes with it. Because not everything you want is only about receiving it. Some things are about becoming the version of you that can carry it without losing yourself in the process. There will be moments where you feel alone in your thoughts, even when surrounded by people. But that solitude is not empty. It is formative. It is teaching you how to hear yourself without external influence, how to trust your perception without constant validation, how to stand firm in what you sense, even when it is not immediately confirmed. That is maturity forming inside you. And with maturity comes quiet confidence. Not loud confidence, not attention-seeking confidence, but something deeper, something that does not need constant reassurance to stay steady. You will notice that your reactions are changing too. Where you used to respond quickly, now you pause. Where you used to explain, now you observe. Where you used to chase understanding, now you let time reveal what words cannot. This is not you becoming distant. This is you becoming precise. And precision is power in the right season. So do not rush to fill silence with noise. Do not rush to replace stillness with distraction. Do not rush to explain what is still unfolding. Some things only make sense when they finish becoming what they are meant to be. Trust that what is being removed is creating space. Trust that what feels unclear is still forming. Trust that what feels slow is still aligned with timing you cannot yet see fully. You are not lost. You are in formation. And formation always feels like uncertainty before it feels like direction. One day, without forcing it, things will align in a way that feels natural, not pressured. You will look back and realize that what felt like delay was protection. What felt like silence was preparation. What felt like distance was redirection, and you will understand that you were never being forgotten. You were being shaped. Until then, stay steady. Not reactive, not rushed, not scattered. Steady, because what is coming into your life will require a version of you that is not easily shaken, not easily distracted, and not easily pulled back into what you have already outgrown. And that version is already forming inside you, even now, even here, even in this silence. You are in a transition phase, not a breakdown, and that distinction changes everything about how you understand what you are going through. What feels like confusion, emotional heaviness, or internal discomfort is not a sign that you are falling apart, but rather a sign that you are moving from one version of yourself into another. Transition is rarely comfortable because it happens in the space between certainty and clarity. It strips away what is familiar before fully revealing what is next, and that in-between space can feel unstable if you try to interpret it using old definitions of yourself. What you are feeling is not failure. Failure would imply that something has ended without purpose, but what is happening in you has direction, even if it is not fully visible yet. You are shedding patterns, thoughts, emotional responses, and even relationships that no longer align with who you are becoming. This process can feel like loss because the mind naturally attaches comfort to what it already knows, even if that familiarity is no longer supportive of growth. So when those familiar structures begin to fade, it can feel like something is wrong, when in reality something is being cleared. Confusion often arises when your inner identity starts evolving faster than your external reality. Your awareness expands before your environment catches up, and that gap creates emotional noise. You start noticing things you once ignored, feeling things you once dismissed, and questioning things you once accepted without thought. This heightened awareness is not instability, it is development. It is your perception becoming sharper, your emotional intelligence becoming deeper, and your intuition becoming more active. The shift between who you were and who you are becoming is not always linear or predictable. Some days you feel grounded, and other days you feel distant from yourself. Some moments you feel strong, and other moments you feel uncertain. This fluctuation is part of integration. Your system is reorganizing itself around a new level of thinking, feeling, and understanding. Old responses no longer fit, but new responses are still forming, so you exist in a temporary state of recalibration. It is important not to interpret this phase as collapse. Nothing is breaking down. Things are being rearranged. You are not losing control of yourself. You are losing attachment to outdated versions of yourself. That can feel disorienting because identity is deeply tied to habit, routine, and emotional familiarity. When those begin to change, it creates a temporary sense of emptiness, but that emptiness is not void, it is space being created for something more aligned. What is happening within you requires patience rather than resistance. The more you try to force clarity prematurely, the more pressure you place on a process that needs time. Transition is not something to rush through, it is something to allow. You are being guided through an internal restructuring that will eventually make you more grounded, more aware, and more aligned with your direction. You are not breaking down, you are being rewritten. Silence and isolation are part of growth, not punishment, and the way you interpret them determines whether you suffer through them or learn from them. When your environment becomes quieter and certain people feel more distant, it is easy to assume something has gone wrong, either within you or around you. But in many cases, this space is not created to harm you. It is created to help you see more clearly without constant external influence shaping your thoughts and emotions. The distance you feel from people is not always a sign of rejection or disconnection. Sometimes it is a natural shift that happens when your internal state begins to change faster than your external surroundings. You start noticing differences that were always there but went unnoticed before. Conversations may feel less aligned, interactions may feel less meaningful, and familiar environments may feel slightly unfamiliar. This is not because those things suddenly became wrong, but because your perception of them is evolving. Silence plays an important role in this process because it removes distraction. When everything around you becomes quieter, you are no longer reacting to noise, opinions, or constant input from others. Instead, you are left with your own thoughts, feelings, and awareness. At first, this can feel uncomfortable because most people are used to processing life through external validation or constant interaction. But over time, silence reveals patterns within you that were previously overlooked. Isolation, in this sense, is not about being cut off, but about being redirected inward. It gives you space to observe your own emotions without interference. You begin to understand what you truly feel versus what you were influenced to feel. You start recognizing which connections are aligned with your growth, and which ones were sustained out of habit or familiarity. This clarity does not always come gently, but it comes honestly. It is also important to understand that this phase is temporary. Silence is not meant to be a permanent state, and isolation is not meant to be your final destination. They are tools within a process, not definitions of your identity. They create distance so that you can see your life from a broader perspective, without emotional overload or external pressure shaping every reaction. In this space, you may find yourself becoming more aware of your boundaries, your emotional limits, and your need for inner stability. You may also find that your tolerance for confusion, dishonesty, or emotional inconsistency becomes lower. This is not negativity developing within you, but refinement. You are learning to distinguish between what supports your growth and what drains your energy. Eventually, this silence will not feel empty. It will feel meaningful. The isolation will not feel like absence, but like preparation. And when you look back, you will realize that the distance you once questioned was actually creating the clarity you needed to move forward with more awareness and strength. Your sensitivity and awareness are increasing. And that shift can feel intense because it changes the way you experience everything around you. You are no longer processing life at the same surface level you once did. Instead, you are picking up on subtle details that used to pass unnoticed: tone shifts in conversations, changes in energy in a room, and emotional undercurrents in people's behavior. This is not overthinking, and it is not instability. It is heightened perception developing over time. As your awareness deepens, your mind begins to connect patterns more quickly and more accurately. You start to notice when words and actions don't fully align, when someone's intention feels different from their expression, or when an environment feels emotionally heavy even if nothing obvious is happening. This doesn't mean the world around you has changed overnight. It means your ability to perceive it has become more refined. You are seeing layers that were always present but previously filtered out by a less sensitive awareness. This strengthening discernment can feel overwhelming at first because it removes the comfort of ignorance. When you don't notice certain things, life feels simpler. But when your awareness expands, you can no longer unsee what you now recognize. That creates a sense of emotional responsibility, where you start questioning situations more deeply and becoming more intentional about where you place your energy. You are no longer reacting automatically, you are observing before responding. With this increase in sensitivity also comes a shift in your internal boundaries. You may find that certain conversations feel draining faster than before, or that certain environments affect your mood more strongly. This is because your system is becoming more selective about what it engages with. It is not rejection, it is refinement. You are beginning to naturally gravitate toward what feels clear, stable, and aligned, while distancing yourself from what feels inconsistent or emotionally confusing. At the same time, this awareness is teaching you to trust your internal signals more. You begin to rely less on external validation and more on what you sense internally. Even when you cannot fully explain why something feels off or right, you start recognizing that your perception often picks up on information before your logic can fully process it. This strengthens your discernment, which is essentially your ability to read situations more accurately over time. However, it is important to stay grounded while this sensitivity grows. Not every feeling is a conclusion, and not every perception needs immediate action. Increased awareness does not mean constant interpretation of everything around you. It means learning when to observe, when to respond, and when to simply allow things to unfold without attaching meaning too quickly. In time, this heightened discernment becomes a strength rather than a burden. You begin to move through life with more clarity, choosing relationships, environments, and decisions with greater intention. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel like guidance. And what once felt like emotional noise begins to refine into understanding. Emotional and mental fatigue is part of transformation, and it often shows up right when something deep inside you is changing. The tiredness you feel is not always about physical exhaustion or lack of rest. Sometimes it is the weight of internal processing. When your thoughts feel heavier than usual, when your emotions fluctuate without a clear reason, and when your energy feels drained even in calm situations, it can be a sign that your inner world is reorganizing itself. This kind of fatigue happens because transformation is not only a mental shift but also an emotional and psychological one. Your mind is letting go of old patterns, beliefs, and responses that you once relied on. Even if those patterns were not serving you anymore, your system still has to adjust to their absence. That adjustment takes energy. It is similar to rebuilding something from within while still living your daily life on top of it. So you feel both the presence of change and the effort of adaptation at the same time. The emotional waves you experience are part of this internal restructuring. One moment you may feel calm or neutral, and the next moment you may feel sadness, restlessness, or reflection without any clear trigger. This does not mean something is wrong with you. It means your emotional system is processing layers of experience that were previously stored or unaddressed. These waves are not random breakdowns, they are releases. They come and go because your mind and emotions are trying to find balance in a shifting internal landscape. Inner heaviness often appears when you are in a state of transition between old identity and new awareness. The old version of you is gradually loosening its grip, but the new version has not fully stabilized yet. That in-between state can feel uncertain, like carrying something you cannot fully define. This weight is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of movement. Stillness does not produce this feeling, change does. It is also important to understand that during transformation, your nervous system becomes more active and sensitive. You start noticing more, feeling more deeply, and processing more information than before. Even ordinary situations can feel amplified because your internal awareness has increased. This can create mental fatigue because your brain is working harder in the background, integrating new ways of thinking and responding. What makes this experience confusing is that nothing externally may appear wrong. Life may look normal on the surface, yet internally you feel different. That disconnect can make you question yourself, but transformation rarely announces itself with clarity in the beginning. It often feels like subtle exhaustion, emotional unpredictability, and quiet reflection before it becomes visible growth. Over time, this phase stabilizes. The heaviness reduces, the emotional waves become less intense, and your mind begins to settle into a new rhythm. What felt like fatigue eventually reveals itself as adjustment. What felt like confusion turns into clarity. And what felt like emotional weight transforms into emotional depth. You are not breaking down. You are adapting. You are being prepared for a stronger version of yourself, even if the process does not feel strong while you are inside it. Preparation is not always visible as progress. Sometimes it feels like pressure, uncertainty, or slowing down. But beneath that surface experience, something important is developing in how you think, respond, and carry yourself internally. This season is building focus by gradually removing distractions that once pulled your attention in too many directions. You may notice that things you used to engage with easily now feel less interesting or less necessary. That is not loss of curiosity, it is refinement of attention. Your mind is learning to prioritize what actually matters instead of reacting to everything equally. Focus is not just about concentration, it is also about learning what to ignore. Stability is also being formed in ways you might not immediately recognize. Emotional fluctuations, changing perspectives, and shifting priorities are all part of finding a more grounded internal state. Even if you feel inconsistent right now, that inconsistency is part of the adjustment process. Stability is not something that appears instantly. It is something that develops after your internal system has adapted to new levels of awareness and experience. Maturity is being built through reflection and experience, not just through time. You are beginning to see situations differently, question things more deeply, and respond with more awareness than before. Where you once reacted quickly, you may now pause. Where you once accepted things at face value, you may now observe more carefully. This shift is not overthinking. It is the development of emotional and mental maturity. What feels like confusion at times is actually the mind learning to operate in a more advanced way. Old patterns of thinking no longer fit as comfortably, but new patterns are still forming. That in-between stage can feel uncomfortable because you are no longer fully operating from your past mindset, yet your new mindset is still taking shape. This is where growth often feels the most uncertain. Clarity does not always come at the beginning of a transition. In fact, it often comes after you have already gone through the most mentally and emotionally demanding part of the process. Right now, you are building the internal structure that will later support clearer decisions, stronger boundaries, and more aligned direction in life. Strength is not only about endurance, it is also about awareness. As you move through this season, you are becoming more aware of your emotions, your reactions, and your environment. This awareness allows you to make more intentional choices instead of reactive ones. Over time, this creates a more stable and confident way of moving through life. You are not randomly going through change, you are being shaped through it. And although the process may feel unclear in the moment, it is gradually building the capacity you will need for what comes next.